YouTube, how's it going? The Goat House is back. Today, we're going over the 20 most underrated signings of free agency so far. Obviously, still some free agents out there, but I got 20 underrated ones here, and they're all underrated for different reasons. Some of these, the bigger contracts, and then some of these kind of real under the radar, sneaky signings here. So 20 to go over. We actually have two teams that made the list twice. They got two signings each on this list. So I'm excited to break it down. We got all kinds of free agency videos up, grades for each team based off their offseason as well. We have mock drafts. We're kind of getting into that draft season right about now. It's April, obviously today. No April Fool's bullshit here. Got fooled earlier in the day with David Njoku on Twitter, so we're not messing around with any of that here. But yeah, excited about this video. Let me know your guys' thoughts in the comments. Like, subscribe, turn notifications on. Much appreciated. Full coverage here. Will be live day one of the NFL draft. Follow our Twitter, live updates on there. Always talking with you guys and not getting fooled by April Fool's bullshit anymore. So that's good. That's always good. Here's our Twitter. Yeah, a lot going on. Talking Tyrann Mathieu. There's some rumors out there. I'm not buying it, all of it fully, maybe some of it. We're always talking. It's a good time. So the first one, maybe a bigger contract, Foye Oluokun, the linebacker from the Falcons, signing with the Jags. 3-year, $45 million. And somehow he's become kind of an underrated player. Very young still, obviously getting better. It's a 3-year deal, so he can continue to get better while he's on that deal. I'm not really a fan of the teams, all kinds of teams sign guys to 1-year deals, and everyone says it's a good deal because he has upside. It's only a 1-year deal. Is he going to reach that upside in that deal? Maybe a little bit, not fully, but this one, I think he can reach some good potential here because he's been getting better and better. He's on a 3-year deal here, and they're definitely looking for two true inside linebackers for their off-ball linebackers there in Jacksonville. They haven't really had the best fits in there for what they've been trying to run. They kind of had fits for the old defenses, so Oluokun's been very productive in the run game, kind of been a sure tackler, really racking it up, and he's been making some impact plays, obviously in the pass game as well, kind of getting his hands on the ball. So, again, I like the fit. I like where they're heading with this defense, and he's a guy that's definitely on the rise. So I think people look at this one, and it's not really an under-the-radar one, but it is underrated because people look at it like, oh, here's a linebacker that got paid a lot by the Jags. The Jags are paying everyone a lot. I think that's the way most people look at it. But I think he's a big-time impact player that's actually getting better, and he can reach a higher potential on the 3-year deal, which no one's really talking about. So I think it ended up being somewhat of an expensive deal. Not too expensive, but obviously it's a rich deal that is also underrated in my opinion. So, yeah, I like that signing for the Jaguars there. So we'll see how that works out. A little surprising that he didn't go back to the Falcons, you thought, and they were trying to get him. We thought like that was the guy he'd probably end up back on the Falcons. So definitely an interesting one of free agency. Next up, the Chiefs signing Justin Reed. It's kind of another one. It's not really an under-the-radar one, but I do think it becomes underrated. And I know a lot of people like this one, right? A lot of people like it, but they're like, I think most people say, well, they're going to lose Tyrann Mathieu, who's a elite safety, debatably, but probably most people say that, and they get Justin Reed. Like most people say, well, yeah, we like the Justin Reed deal, but where are they going with this? Where are they going with this? But what I think people don't realize, well, Justin Reed's played free and strong within his young career so far. Most of the snaps came to free safety last year though. So I think they're valuing something different. When the Chiefs kind of had some miscues at safety, it's kind of deep downfield, and some of the guy like Sorensen, sometimes he actually had a lot of responsibility. Corners and man, he's got to cover a lot of ground back there. Matthews is kind of in the slot box area, So now you get a guy that has the experience back there that's definitely better back there. You're kind of changing it up on teams a little bit, the game plan. And of course, he could come up and play strong if you need him to as well. So I think there's more impact in it than people realize. People realize, think Justin Reed's a solid young safety. This is a solid sign, but I think there's more to it than that. So I think it became kind of an underrated signing because of the impact on the field, in my opinion. 3-year, $31.5 million is a pretty good deal too for the team friendly, I'd say, for the Chiefs there. So that's what I'm excited about. Excited to see kind of the change in there in the secondary and see how he is on his kind of first contract after that rookie contract here. So, yeah, another one I could be really excited about. I think everyone is. Next up, this is more of the under-the-radar, underrated signing here with Tim Settle going to the Bills. This is a guy that was a backup for Washington, but mainly because who was in front of him. I mean, look at that defensive line and, looking at Daron Payne and Jonathan Allen in the interior in front of him. He's more of the Daron Payne style player, but Payne's one of the better young nose tackles in football, really. And when Settle was on the field, he looked pretty productive, especially disrupting the pocket, too, which just kind of gets by people. People don't really realize. So I think he has a lot of upside as a starter. It is, and we'll see if he starts week 1, snap 1, maybe not, but I think he's going to get very much so. Well, I think he actually might. Now I said that because early downs, running downs, obviously, but he can disrupt the pocket, but I think he's going to end up getting – it's weird going from Commanders to Bills. You're going to get more snaps and maybe a better team. I guess differences in defensive lines there. And the Bills are kind of focused on stopping the run a little more. So I think we're going to see increased load for the young defensive tackle here, and he's going to show that, hey, he probably should be a starter. He wasn't a backup because of his talents. He was a backup because of the talents in front of him on the Washington defensive line. So 2-year, $9 million is a very solid deal. I really like that they didn't do a 1-year. Would not have loved because I like Settle for more of his upside, what he can become is more with more playing time. So the 1 year I would not have really loved as much, obviously. So 2-year, $9 million, $4.5 per year. That's pretty damn good here. So it's kind of a under the radar player, and it becomes an underrated signing, in my opinion. Not one that's talked about a whole lot, and maybe should be, and a bit more here. Next up, we got the Buccaneers and Russell Gage. This one's definitely growing on me. At first, I liked it too, but 3-year, $30 million. It's a little expensive, and that doesn't mean too expensive. It's just there's a lot of money there, obviously. But yeah, it's really growing on me too, though, because Russell Gage was clearly getting better down the stretch last season. If you watch, he was actually getting better specifically in contested catches as well, going up and attacking the ball at its highest point. So really like that from Russell Gage, something that we haven't seen a whole lot of before. So it was pretty clear to me that he was improving. And now he goes to the Buccaneers with Tom Brady, high passing attack, focuses on Mike Evans and Chris Godwin. And then when there was a lot of guys injured, the Buccaneers took a step down, pretty big step down. So it kind of helps in multiple ways. Just such a perfect pairing too. I mean, Mike Evans, your big body X receiver. Godwin's more of your Y, big slot receiver. And now you got Gage who, fits more of that Z role there. And they're all kind of different in a way where they go together perfectly. So I think he's going to be more productive than people realize. So this is one that should be growing on all of us. It's growing on me. So I think, I think he's going to continue to improve. That's the thing. At first glance, it's like 3-year deal. Well, Brady's probably only back for one more year, right? So is this going to be, how good is this going to look in the next couple of years? But it's the guy that still has upside, and he's still getting better. He proved that, in a short amount of time down the stretch of last season. So getting him on a 3-year deal looks pretty good as well. And again, I think he pairs with those receivers super well. So again, one of those ones that are really growing on me. I think it caught people's eye, but I think it's going to be more of an impact, and that's why then people kind of are saying, and that's why I think it's on the underrated side. Next up, we got the Saints going Marcus Maye. Maybe the Saints offseason hasn't gone exactly to plan, but Marcus Maye I like Marcus Maye. It's a very good signing here. We didn't really get to see much at all of him last year because of injury, but the year before with the Jets, which the Jets struggled that year, but he was very, very good. You saw him kind of without Jamal Adams in there, who was just strictly your strong safety, and Maye was strictly your free safety. Maye was pretty solid free safety, but Adams left, and then they had Maye kind of doing a bit of everything. I mean, they even had a man up on guys in the slot, tight ends a lot, move tight ends a lot. Different responsibilities, man, zone, free, straight safety, strong safety. So, and he really had a really good year. I think people forget he had a really good year. So, and the Saints are very well coached defensively. They always have a pretty stout defense. So I'm excited. I mean, they lose Marcus Williams, but they gain Marcus Maye. I'm excited to see how different it's going to look, how Maye's going to perform, if he stays healthy. Are they going to use him? Well, they run a lot of split safety, two-man underword, split safety, but are they going to, not every snap. So are they going to use him more free, strong on those off snaps there of their their favorite coverages. But so I'm excited to see what they got in store for us with Marcus Maye. 3-year, 22.5 to me is a pretty good deal as well. Stays healthy. He's going to be good. Marcus Williams is very good and definitely considered better than Marcus Maye right now. But this is one where in a few years it's going to be like, we're going to be saying like, yeah, major differences in the contracts, but hey, Marcus Maye ended up working out pretty damn well. Maybe the switch, or not the switch, but well, yeah, swapping one out, bringing one in for a lot cheaper. Maybe it paid off. Maybe it really paid off. I think we could be saying that in the future there. So I definitely like that one from the Saints. Seahawks next with Uchenna Nwosu. He's kind of one of my big-time sleeper free agents heading in, and doesn't guarantee him to be a underrated signing after he signs. It depends on the contract as well, of course. And the Seahawks signed him for a 2-year. Originally thought $20 million, but it's 2-year, $19.055 million. And even at $20 million total on 2 years, I thought that was great. So this is fantastic in my opinion. Nwosu's a very underrated player with a lot of upside. He's kind of that hybrid type pass rusher where you can drop him in coverage, you can kind of line him up on the inside, blitz them in a way. There's some pass rushers out there that rack up blitzes. Well, how do they do that if they're rushing off the edge? Well, they're coming from different spots. Seems to always get his hands in the ball, especially like in the most important time too. And the Seahawks is another upside guy that already can make an impact. The Seahawks are kind of they're kind of looking for the upside guys here. So glad he signed more than a 1-year deal for that reason as well. You want the upside guys you want to sign for more than 1 year on a team-friendly deal. They did that. So, yeah, I'm excited about this one for sure. I'm a fan of Nwosu's game. I think he's very underrated. I think people look at, oh, he didn't get double-digit sacks. I think that's what we do a lot of these pass rushers, and they kind of write him off. It's really not how it works there. So, like that one. It's kind of a mixture of under the radar, not talk. It's in the middle of the other ones we kind of talked about there. Some of them are talked about a lot, but they're underrated for reasons people don't see, and some are just not talked about at all. They're very under the radar. So I mentioned when starting this video 20 of these, and then 2 teams made it twice, and the Seahawks were actually one of those teams. Because Quinton Jefferson. The last time, people forget that the last time we saw Quinton Jefferson on the Seahawks, he had himself a hell of a year, and people didn't even realize that year. They didn't even realize that year. He's a very underrated player then. He didn't really work out in Buffalo. I felt like they didn't really use him right, used him on specific downs, specific situations in one spot. So he didn't work out with the Bills. Then he's with the Raiders. He was all right for them. But that last year on Seattle, if you actually watched the Seahawks and Quinton Jefferson, you noticed him lining up in. And I'm telling you, every single position on that D-line, you see him lining up over the guard at D-tackle. You see him line up at 3 technique, a hair outside the guard. You actually see the guy lining up at nose tackle at times. He's not like a full-time nose tackle, but causing a ruckus there. Because they were at that time, last time I had Jefferson, they were very limited on pass rushers, edge rushers. They would line him up there, and he would make an impact. So I thought he had an incredible year that year, and it kind of got past everyone. And it hasn't fully, he was all right with the Raiders last year, but it hasn't fully worked out since he's been away from Seattle. So I love to see him back in Seattle. I love that. Him and Poona Ford. And Poona Ford's more interior than Jefferson. So I like this very much. I really do. So, and then getting him back for more than 1 year, 2-year, 9.5, very, very cheap. I like that a lot. So the Seahawks got some pretty good underrated signings here. Maybe not the best morale overall, coming off the offseason because it's more towards rebuild mode. It's pretty obvious they're going to be worse, but that doesn't mean they had a bad offseason. Doesn't mean there's not good signings in there. There's a couple good signings in here for Seattle. Next up, the Chargers. Speaking of the Seahawks, they got Gerald Everett, who was a 1-year tight end for them, obviously. It seemed like he was a little better with the Rams, but yeah, the Chargers kind of need another weapon out there. They kind of used a number of tight ends last year, and they were very inconsistent. Wanted them to be more of a weapon full time. And that's what you get with Everett. So, it's a high-powered passing attack, so I would expect Everett. This one's growing on me more, too. I liked it from the jump, but it's growing on me more, too, because it's Justin Herbert, big Justin Herbert fan. It's a high-powered passing offense. They're going to use this weapon. They are going to use this weapon, and he is a weapon. Maybe a little inconsistent in the past, but definitely more consistent than the guys that they had in there, the Chargers, that is, last year. Want more consistency catching the ball, specifically in the red zone from the Chargers. A lot of drops last year. So they get a big-time weapon. It's going to make some big-time plays. 2-year, $12 million. 6 per year. It's looking pretty good. So this is one that, yeah, it's kind of in the middle as well. People are very well aware that this happened. It's not like this huge one, but I think he's probably going to be more productive stats-wise. Well, in general, productive. He's going to be more productive than people think. And I think it's mainly due to this offense, Justin Herbert and this offense. But if you get a right weapon in there, like a Gerald Everett, it'll work. It'll work. Next up, the Dolphins, Connor Williams. Kind of swept under the rug a little bit, mainly because the other big-time moves the Dolphins have made. But Connor Williams has been getting better. He's been getting better, and it's been pretty clear. Still has some moments here and there where it's like you kind of wish you could play a little better. But getting him on 2-year $14.035, around that $7 million per year range, I would have guessed a little more. There's so many teams desperate for offensive linemen. And then kind of just looking at this guy's upside, I thought a team would have probably dished out like a 4-year deal for a lot more money, $9 million per year, 9.5 maybe. So, and the Dolphins needed, and they were one of those desperate teams, for offensive linemen here, and whether it's tackle or guard. And they get Armstead the tackle. They get Connor Williams, who's more familiar with guard. Some talk about him moving around a bit, but I do think they like him at guard. It's just big time here. Big time and on this. You would think a team like the Dolphins would have to be one of those teams that overpaid for a guy like this, like $9 to $10 million per year. So I like it a lot. It's going to be a starter. Again, he's getting better. It's one of those upside guys. They got him for more than a year, so I like that even more because of that. So that was definitely a good one. Steelers next year. This is pretty much somewhat similar to Connor Williams. I definitely think James Daniels is better than Connor Williams. But when I say similar, I thought somebody would pay him more. I actually thought, for a guard. He's a guard, and I thought somebody would pay him more per year because a lot of desperate teams like the Steelers. I thought, if I would have predicted, I thought he would have, and I like James Daniels. I always did, but I still thought, even with liking him, that he might get overpaid a little bit. Getting that close to that $11 million per year range maybe would kind of be the overpay. But if I would have predicted, I did say a 10 and a half range, probably what we got. So we got a little bit less than that. Steelers desperate for offensive linemen. Daniels kind of fits what they're trying to do there with their running scheme, their blocking scheme, kind of a bully guard. So I really like, this is one of the better value deals, fits and upside all at the same time of free agency, actually. So, he might actually be, and this is like, it's kind of a good thing and a bad thing. Like, he could, at the end of the day, be the Steelers' best offensive lineman, which isn't ideal if James Daniels is your best offensive lineman, but he is good, and you found somebody that's pretty good for you at the same time. So you found somebody that could be your best offensive lineman. So it's kind of like good and bad at the same time. But overall, looking at the kind of the contract, the fit, all those things, I really like this deal here. So, and again, this isn't one that's not talked about at all. People hyped about this one, but maybe a little bigger in terms of the value and everything than people realize here. So, next up, the Cowboys, speaking of the Steelers, going with James Washington. This is a super cheap one. Just one of those super cheap ones, kind of a steal in my opinion. 1 year, 1.1875, so extremely cheap here for the Cowboys. And overall, the Cowboys' offseason hasn't been too appealing. That's probably putting being generous there, but they don't want to spend as much as they've been spending at receiver, and that could make sense in a way. Move on from Cooper, and then you go get a cheap receiver that could potentially be playing a lot better than what his contract. I do wish it was kind of a 2-year deal or something like that, but it could be playing better in his contract. And I always kind of like James Washington. We haven't seen a whole lot of him, especially recently. I just thought he was beginning to fit the Steelers less and less because he's kind of a deep ball outside receiver. And that's kind of been happening less and less with the Steelers. He's also, the same style of receiver. Look at Claypool and Johnson. So that's why when Juju was out, they couldn't really put Washington in that spot because he's not a big slot. He's not a slot receiver there. So it kind of made sense why he wasn't playing a whole bunch. And, you see way more of a high-powered passing attack of the Cowboys. Plus, they can get the ball downfield. I think he's going to fit in great. I think he's going to be a lot more productive than people are talking about right now. A lot more productive. So this is going to end up one of those ones where it's a sneaky steal. The downside is he's going to be a free agent next year, and I bet you he's going to earn a lot more. Not saying he's going to get paid crazy, but he's going to earn a lot more than what you would hope too. The 1.1875 million here. So. Yeah, very sneaky. That's one of the more sneaky signings in my opinion. I just, I think why he's underwhelming with the Steelers, he just wasn't really fitting what they were doing there, what was working there. Titans signing Austin Hooper. This is a big one here. for the Titans, mainly because what they needed. You know, talk about Hooper, kind of used to be a big name, still pretty young though. You know, you look at his age, it's like you think, I thought he was around longer than that. But 1 year, $6 million, fairly cheap. He has been a little underwhelming. He didn't play up to that contract he did have, but this is a lot cheaper. But look at the Titans last year, very good regular season team. You know, but then what was kind of missing, they didn't really have the best tight end play, consistent tight end play, and you get a guy that can block and catch the ball as a tight end here. So I think this actually improves the Titans offense. I think it's an incredible fit as well. So this is a pretty good one. I think people just kind of stopped talking about Hooper because he didn't live up to the last contract. He got cut, but this is more of his contract and a better fit and a team that was, I said the Titans were probably the team most in need of a tight end. Yeah, we did a needs video, I remember, before free agency, and the only team that I had tight end as their top need was the top 3 need was the Tennessee Titans. So yeah, that ended up being their biggest need. So they got a gift kind of that Hooper got cut because he actually wasn't supposed to be. I thought he was going to be cut, but then there was some reports coming out that the Browns will hold on to him for now, and then that ended up being not true. So our original thought was actually accurate there. So Titans kind of caught a break there, kind of fell in their laps. Next, we got the Patriots. This was actually pretty recent, a couple days ago maybe. Jabrill Peppers, giant safety, who was injured last year, signing with the Patriots. Originally a report, 1 year, $5 million. Turns out usually that's the case. It's the max deal, like with incentives. It turns out it's a 1 year, $2 million deal. Imagine if you predicted that when Jabrill Peppers was drafted. Like this guy, when he's off his rookie contract, he's going to get a 1 year, $2 million. Everyone probably would have laughed, you know. He's such a specific type of safety, kind of that box type of safety. And he's a guy that I wasn't, he was a big name that was hyped up a little too much, and I wasn't overly high on him. But I saw some good moments, down the stretch before he got hurt, especially there. It's such a good fit with the Patriots. The Patriots are good with these types of guys, too. I think they're going to use him in multiple different spots. They won't be using him at free safety, but multiple different spots. Strong safety in the box. Maybe he can man up on a guy, move tight end here and there. So I'm excited to watch him in a Belichick defense here. It's a very cheap deal. He's probably going to produce more than people realize. So this could end up as a steal. But then he'll be a free agent again next year as well. So that's maybe the downside if he ends up working out. But I guess a little bit of mystery with him. So 1 year, I guess, makes sense. We got the Falcons with their quarterback signing, their new starting quarterback, Marcus Mariota, 2 year, $18.75 million. He's familiar with the offense with Arthur Smith there. I think that's fairly cheap. I mean, look at 18.75. It's to me though, when you look at the average and look how the contract's laid out. It's almost like an option on the second year. It's a very good value deal with the Falcons, I think. And I think Mariota, he's definitely, I know he's talented enough to be a starter. He's just had some injuries pop up. It's kind of mainly, there was a weird injury in there, something like a nerve something, something weird that I haven't seen before in the past. But mainly minor injuries where it's not like long-term out. So he's just got to, stay healthy here. And I think, the Falcons need kind of Matt Ryan's the better quarterback, obviously, but they needed a guy that kind of can escape pressure, get outside the pocket, throw on the run. I thought that kind of was what the Falcons need there. He can get you some good play. He can it's more of a fit in that offense, even though he's not better than Matt Ryan. And he's a pretty good bridge quarterback if you want to get a quarterback and learn more of that offense rather than the Matt Ryan offense, So I think it makes sense on where they want to go and part of the rebuild. It just makes a lot of sense there. And I thought it was kind of 1A and 1B with the free agent quarterbacks. For me, it was Marcus Mariota and Jameis Winston. So they land one, the top quarterback here on a fairly cheap deal in my opinion. So I like that one a lot there. Maybe on the underrated side. Next up, the Broncos getting Billy Turner, the right tackle from the Packers. Originally report 1 year, $5 million. That ended up being max value, so it's 1 year, 2.5. That's really good for an experienced right tackle. He's been up and down a little bit. I know there's some people that don't love Billy Turner and what he did with the Packers, but I thought he was solid for the most part, especially with his experience. And then you got some Packers coaching staff members, including the head coach, Daniel Hackett, with the Broncos. So they liked him enough to bring him in. They know he fits their blocking scheme. They needed a right tackle to polish off the offensive line, obviously, playing with a pretty good unit. And, if you watch Rodgers, one thing that stands out like a big-time play is he'll kind of scramble right, and he'll have some time out there, and then he'll, make a beautiful throw. And, Turner's the guy blocking on the right side as well. So Very cheap deal, low risk. We know he's a fit. The coaching staff there liked him. Was a need kind of last into the offensive line. So I think people see that and they're like, okay, their offensive line's complete, but they don't realize the other things that I explained, that could finish off the offensive line. And he's familiar with everything there and some things there. So I like that one a lot for the Broncos there, who had a really good offseason, obviously. The Packers, speaking of the Packers, Jaren Reed, I like this one a lot too, because Jaren Reed's, I think he's not like a super underrated player because he's kind of known, but he is on the underrated side. I thought he was playing very well in Seattle before he went to Kansas City. Kansas City started the year playing, I don't know what they were doing on that defensive line. They were kind of playing guys out of position, and then when they kind of got right, a guy like Jaren Reed got right, started making some impact plays. But the Packers for so long now just kind of been going in terms of the interior defense line, minus Kenny Clark, who's one of the better nose tackles, and he's not just a nose tackle, he moves around, but one of the better ones in football. Minus him, just very underwhelming at who they were putting out there. They were kind of settling, like, we don't really need to get better there, but they did. They did. And they go get a guy. They go get a good guy there to pair with Clark, and they have some solid pass rushers as well. So I like that a lot. That's the main reason. Now, people look at this like, all right, Packers got a solid player in Reed, 1 year, 3.25. That's pretty good. I think that's the way people look at it. I look at it as, what's this going to look like with Clark and Reed up there, because we haven't seen that. Don't get me wrong. They had some guys that they weren't bad players, like they can play, but they haven't had this. And I'm not trying to make it like Reed's like this big time player and this duo is elite. I think Kenny Clark's very, very good, but and I do think Reed's good, but just kind of seeing what, something we haven't seen yet. So I like that one there for Green Bay. Next up, we got the Jets signing Tyler Conklin, the Vikings tight end, who had some sneaky production. Like, you don't realize, if you go look at his receiving production, he actually had a pretty productive year. And they didn't even realize kind of what he can do right away. He was kind of here and there in the past, and they went and traded for Herndon from the Jets. Coincidence? Thinking he was going to be the guy because Irv Smith got hurt, but Conklin ended up just being a lot better than him and taking over there. So seemed like he was getting better and better down the stretch. Got a lot of yards after the catch. You put him out wide, send him down the sideline, make a contested catch. So he's a sneaky athlete, but sneaky catching the ball for a tight end. So the Jets, with him and Uzomah, and the receivers that they had, and they're trying to add one more here probably in the draft. It's going to be a lot of options there, a lot of options that it might be tough for some defenses to figure out how to deal with. You see what the team like the Bengals are deploying, and they got Uzomah too, coincidence, but deploying so many guys and teams don't really know what to do. And be curious to see who kind of is more productive as a receiver, Conklin versus Uzomah. But yeah, Conklin still got his best ball ahead of him. And he was sneaky productive last year, so I'm excited to watch him and what I think is going to be a high-powered passing attack. Well, at least they're going to try to be. So we can make assumptions right now, but there's nothing guaranteed there. We got to see the progression of Zach Wilson, but and the Jets were the team that made it twice. So the Seahawks and the Jets were the teams that made this video twice. Jordan Whitehead, who had a hell of a year, was kind of a borderline top 100 player for me based off this past season with the Buccaneers, and kind of doing a bit of everything. I mean, they kind of had the interchangeable safeties with Winfield mainly, because Winfield could play free or he can come up in the slot box. You can blitz him. Whitehead was kind of the same thing. They were kind of interchangeable. Mike Edwards was more of, you're kind of your box guy, blitz him a bit. But Whitehead kind of did a bit of everything, and he just seemed to always be around the ball, impact plays kind of at the right time. So he really took a big step up last year. Again, a guy that just flies around the ball. He's always around the ball. So one for Robert Saleh's defense here. I guess not the downside, but the Bucs defense is kind of so unique, especially how they use those safeties and their blitzing. So you could say there maybe is a chance he just maybe only fits that Buccaneers defense. But again, I love the way he played. Just seemed like a guy that just always found the ball. And that doesn't mean interceptions, just always around the ball, flying to the ball. I think he's going to be solid, especially in that defense, well-coached defense with the Jets. And it would be good to have a safety in there because their situation. Ashton Davis has played a little bit of strong and free, done a little bit of both. So having kind of those versatile safeties in there makes a lot of sense. And the deal is fairly cheap. I know the Bucs couldn't really bring anybody back, but I'm surprised they didn't find a way I guess it makes sense because they still have Winfield Edwards and they brought in Logan Ryan. But I thought it was somewhat of on a cheaper deal here. So, yeah, the Jets make the list twice there. Jeff Gladney to the Cardinals. Cardinals a little quiet in free agency, but this is a very underrated one because this guy in 2020 was a first-round pick. On most of our boards, yeah, he was a late first-round guy. That's where he went in the draft. And usually those guys that end up off their team already, they're busts, right? They're busts, but Gladney got in trouble off the field, and sometimes that's the case, and the guys don't make a comeback, but he, I guess where the Chargers, I'm not the off-the-field issue guy, but he ended up clearing, he ended up being okay. It took some time. So now he's good to go. It's almost like the Cardinals are getting a second-year guy. Yeah, he is going to be a second-year guy. A corner that's it still feels like a first-round prospect. He's got experience outside in the slot. Just still got tremendous upside. They gave him more. I like that they gave him the 2-year deal. It's like first glance, it's like, first thought probably for myself as well is that 2-year deal and a guy that was just in trouble off the field. What if he gets in trouble? I guess that's a downside. What if he gets in trouble again? But you don't want to get this guy in a 1-year deal and then he plays like this first-round prospect and then everyone's just throwing a bunch of money at him in the second year. So you get him on the 2-year deal, $6 million. 3 per year, obviously. Not exactly. That's the average. But so I like that one for the Cardinals. They needed a corner as well. So this could end up being kind of a steal here because he could end up being that first-round guy, pretty easily. So we'll see. And then one more. We had 20 on this list. The Panthers getting Bradley Bozeman. We were hearing about Bradley Bozeman before free agency opened. Like, he's going to have a pretty good market. A lot of teams already showing interest in free agency open. Day one, we got a report that like 7 teams were interested, right? Because he played very well for the Ravens last year at center. And then all of a sudden he kind of sat around for a bit, maybe asking for a bit much. Teams were kind of going under the radar centers, and then the Panthers end up getting a steal there at $2.8 million on 1 year. I wish it was more than 1 year, but they definitely needed a center, and they got one. And I think they got a pretty solid one here on a pretty damn good deal. So I think we could see the Panthers, and they need a left tackle pretty bad still. But they got Corbett, who was somewhat of a sleeper signing as well with Bozeman. So I think we can definitely expect some improvements in the interior offensive line for the Panthers. I talked about this in our last video where I graded each team. The Panthers kind of have a weird offseason right now. They have signings like this that I really, really like. But I think their plan overall blew up in their faces so far, at least it looks, because they borrowed all this money from the future, and they're just piling it up and you do that to spend it. If you don't spend it, it's pretty much a fail because you used it from future years, right? And they kind of missed on some of the bigger guys to spend that money for so far, So I'm curious if they still got something going. It's been an interesting offseason, but I guess free agency, when you just look at the signings, look at signings like this, if you just look at the signings, that part looks pretty good. I think that part, so it's kind of like an all over the place offseason for the Panthers, and I'm one of those teams that I'm maybe the most curious out of any team on what the hell they got coming for us, whether it's more signings. There could be a signing after the draft if it's quarterback, if they draft a quarterback, if they trade back to try to get some picks back because they traded some away for guys in the over the last year. Team I'm very curious about. The more I'm talking about, the more I'm intrigued I am right now. So that's my 20 underrated free agency signings. There's probably some more out there we can discuss. We're always discussing with you guys on Twitter, comment section here. We'll see that. I'll check those out, but make sure you like, subscribe, turn notifications on. We got the full NFL coverage here. You can find all kinds of coverage on the channel already. Definitely more to come. Very excited for the draft at the end of this month. Yeah, that's going to do it. Thanks for watching. Goodbye.